Good morning, good morning, good morning. Hello, everyone. Hello. Welcome in. Welcome in. If you can hear the sound of my voice, you have discovered Grandma's Games Lab. Welcome in. Hi. And good morning. Good morning, good morning, good morning to everyone out there in the pillow and blanket fort. I do see your messages. I may not be doing a lot of replying today unless people have questions about our subject. So, Grandma's Games Lab is here to talk about games, brains, and history. So, we've had several episodes up so far, and you can catch those on my YouTube. And they will be in a playlist called Games Lab Patreon or something like that. You can always feel free to join us and participate in the Patreon as well. And here's we'll put these links in the chat. But what are we doing today? Today we are going to history. This is part 3. This is the first game that I've done a 3-part series for. It is a social deduction game called Blood on the Clocktower. It's quite brilliant. It is brought to us by the Pandemonium Institute. And they have multiple games under their belt. This one had a Kickstarter, I believe came out around 2019. Sort of hit modern culture around the same time that Among Us was becoming a huge craze. And very similar concepts. This is designed to be an in-person game. So where Among Us is exclusively an online computer game, available in multiple formats, you can play cross-platform from a phone to somebody who's on a PC to other platforms. Blood on the Clocktower was designed to be an in-person social deduction game, similar to things like Werewolf, but distinct. I mean, Stephen Medway, the creator of Blood on the Clocktower, has been quoted in interviews to say that he designed this game he designed the game he wanted to play, really. Good morning, Marm. Good morning, Wolfie. Welcome in. So, Stephen Medway's design of this game initially was just to answer some frustrations that he was having with where other games were missing things, mechanics and gameplay loops and things like that he really wanted to play. So, that's what they say. If you're going to write the things you want to read. If you're going to, create a movie, make a movie that you want to watch, that sort of intention. So if you're going to make a game that you want to play. And it has taken off and become incredibly popular. It now has online iterations, and we have spent the last 2 episodes. Our first episode was about games, brains, and roleplay. Our second episode for Blood on the Clocktower was about this game. Basically a what's in the box. And there literally is a box you can buy, but it's not an introductory, like, how to play. It's a what should you expect in the event that you have never heard of this, that you have never played Werewolf or other social deduction games, that you have no idea what Among Us is. What should you expect from Blood on the Clocktower? That would be episode 2. Games, brains, and roleplay. Now we are back to games, brains, and history, where we will be looking at the actual history that inspires the setting for this beautiful game. And all right, take care of that. And as always, if anyone has questions, please, please, please feel free to pop up in the Twitch chat. I did not put anything up on the Patreon. I really honestly have not seen anybody like or comment anything on the Patreon page, even though we have members. You can join for free. It is none of my content is gate kept behind any paywalls. You can access all of my content for free. But if you would like to support me as a creator, I would really appreciate that. It's been a challenge recently. So let's go to the slides, shall we? The real history behind the demon-plagued village of Blood on the Clocktower. The story so far. Blood on the Clocktower is a social deduction game for 5 to 20 people, role-playing as townsfolk and demons in a small village. The frenzied hunt for a murderer has driven the townsfolk to begin executing one another by day, while the demon eliminates them by night. The setting, I mean, nobody's come out and said this, but this is a pretty common trope that when you're talking about a small village with washerwomen and fortune tellers and, you know, it's the tavern that you meet in when you play D&D and other roleplay games like that. It is most likely inspired by villages of the 15th to 18th centuries across Europe and the American colonies. This escaped Europe and made its way into the American colonies as well, who were swept up in superstitious fervor by various religious leaders to murder their neighbors. Like, straight up, if you take a few steps back from all of the salacious tales and other propaganda and misrepresentations out there of the era of witch panic, what you find is if you are among those folks who go, okay, but witches aren't real. I mean, yes, there are people who have ritualistic practices and now in the with Wicca and identify their practices in line with the original witchcraft, which was a name that many Christian religious folks gave to those who were practicing pagan arts. And witchcraft, it goes, as a concept, goes all the way back into ancient Greece and other ancient cultures, where many what were considered just pagan nature practices were referred to as witching. Like divining for water, casting sheep knuckle bones in ancient Norse culture. That's all witchery, where you're trying to suss out information from the ether in order to affect things in the current day. But this was a very special era due to several things conspiring together, very much like the era of the Black Plague required certain things to come together to become that perfect storm. This witch panic that really began through the origins of the Inquisition. The Inquisition happened in the 13th century, in the 1200s. It was instituted as a way to eradicate heresy. The Holy Roman Empire had spread so far into pagan lands that the church proper really wanted to shut down the bastardization of the Christian religion as they wanted it practiced, because people were adopting local traditions into Christian tradition, and it started to look a little different in some areas. So the Spanish Inquisition was dominantly introduced to address heretical beliefs and practices that were sneaking into what they wanted to have as proper Christian worship. So the witch panic sprang out of that because the clergy who were moving into towns, of course, you're not going to have natural clergy people in a pagan town that you've now occupied as part of the Holy Roman Empire. They're going to have their own religious rituals and beliefs and practices, and you're going to send in one of your guys to prop up a church and tell everybody how to Christian. And that person is now going to have power and authority over these folks that none of their internal powers and authorities will be able to outbalance. So what are we looking at in those areas? So if you have a small village, let's say it's in England. So let's look, because that's a lot of the imagery and things like that you get from this. And a lot of the people who play are UK based and Europe based. Now, to be fair, the witch panic really broke out in Europe proper. Germany, there's witch trials in Norway are some of the earliest witch trials. Wherever missionaries of the Christian church were going, the witch panic managed to follow along. So here's what you have. Before the Inquisition, judicial interrogation was more about a prosecutorial style. What you see in Western culture now, there's a defense, there's a prosecution. The prosecution claims that the defendant did a thing, the defendant defends themselves, and if the prosecution has failed to prove their case versus the defense provided, then no punishment, no jail, thanks for playing. If the prosecution has been convincing enough, then punishment is assessed and sentencing happens. So now we have Inquisition, which is a different process. Inquisition is about it's all about accusation and using torture not as a punishment, but as a means to gain a confession. So we're going to suss you out. You're going to be subjected to inquisition, which is not the same legal procedure as we accuse. I defend myself. Well done. This is, you're a witch. I know you're a witch, and we're going to torture you until you admit you're a witch. Right? So it's not about, oh, we're going to torture you and make you repent. It's, we're going to torture you until you admit what we're accusing you of. Now, as much as people want to use the Victorian era medieval torture chamber circus acts and sensationalism to represent what actually happened, it's not real. You had a lot of people who had access to a few things, and we'll get into that as we go along, and had access to a few documents and images from the era, and then extrapolated lots and lots of other sensationalist things onto them. To be fair, as the original papal bull, a bull is just an official document. Papal is meaning it comes from the Pope. The official papal bull had good intentions. It was just like, would you please tell people that, like, they have to stop using fake books and superstitious documents and claim that they have a place in Christian education. I mean, we had a lot of books of the Bible that were out there during this time. And so, you have Gospel of Judas and Gospel of Mary and other things like that were being used. And the church just really wanted to combat that and say, no, all right, come on, guys, don't be pulling obscure shit that doesn't have accredited provenance. We need to just, can we all sort of keep the curriculum for this education the same? And witchcraft is right out. So you have a lot of places in Christian scripture that forbid superstition and divination and other things like that. So we're still like, Christianity is still about 1,000 years old at this point. And a lot of that era was Dark Age. So you have a lot of people who are only learning about this religious sect as verbally. They're not able to read, so they're not reading anything, and the majority of the scholarly work is in the clergy. The clergy are the scholars of the day. Also because the monks were the ones who were copying books, right? We don't have printing presses in this era. So the monks are copying books, and a lot of the books that they're copying are ancient tomes that are scientific in nature. That's why you ended up with a lot of science monks. The monks of science. However, in 1486, so now we're up in the 15th century, the Dominicans and the Franciscans were two of the dominant orders of monks and friars serving the Roman Catholic efforts across Christendom of the time. We're not going to get into history and maps and all of that stuff. I'm just going to hit some real high points. We're going to hit some fence posts so that you understand why we have a game where townsfolk are murdering each other in the hopes of killing a demon. We have state-sanctioned murder. I mean, it's the Purge. Or what was that? Is that what that movie was called? I have no idea. Somebody can correct me in chat. So in 1486, an ex-inquisitor, Heinrich Kramer, and he has other names that Invictus and things like that he goes by. Let's not get too deep into Heinrich, except to say that he was an inquisitor. He was a Dominican priest. He did participate in inquisitions throughout the 14th century, which would have been the 1300s. He was no longer working as an inquisitor. He got together with another buddy, Johannes Spring. I believe that's the correct name. I can look that up. They published a book called the Malleus Maleficarum, the Hammer of Witches. Now, the Malleus Maleficarum has a controversial history. As all controversy, that may have boosted its popularity. So, let's talk about Heinrich and Sprenge for a moment. They picked a very specific thing. They picked witches. We're here to teach you how to deal with witches, right? No other apostasy, no other heresy, no other blasphemy, just the witchcraft. And we're going to be the experts on this. Kramer tried to present his text as the official position of the church, and it did not take long for theologians to be like, bitch, no, I don't think so. That is not the position officially of the church. Now I believe we have universities and things like this in France and Germany, and people are just like, no. Yeah, stop it. But this is an 800-page book, okay? Before the printing press. This is a massive tome. But that's what theologians were doing in the day, right? This is like your doctoral thesis. You're going to put as many pages as you can into it. He needed this to be the legacy of his life's work. Sprenge was Jacob, not Johannes. Jacob Sprenge. So he's kind of credited as a co-author, but he sort of distanced himself from this whole thing pretty quickly. Where's the bit here? Oh, here. It says he was expelled. Kramer was expelled from the city of Innsbruck and dismissed by the local bishop as senile and crazy. That Kramer was probably falling into disfavor socially and maybe not enjoying a level of social influence that he had when he had some power as an inquisitor. And that writing this book has been speculated as an act of revenge. Like, how dare you? How dare you question me? But a lot of people are just in the church of the day are just like, no. This is the rantings of a madman. So you go, okay, well, if it wasn't really received well in the day, why are we even talking about it? Well, this book has a very particular appeal. We're talking about a super religious time. We're talking about priests and monks and celibacy and nuns. Everybody is repressing sexuality in an effort for many, a misguided effort for many of this is how to be more Christ-like, because Christ did not have sexual partners, did not have a spouse, and so the only way to be more like our boy is to adopt that same lifestyle, which is fine for some. Speaking as an ace person here, woohoo, shout out all my ace people. That's a lot easier, and for other folks it's not, and so the demonization of sexuality started to creep up as well. And this book, the Malleus Maleficarum, has sexy stuff in it. And we'll get into why and how and what. Stay tuned. So 1486, this is when this book is published. Massive tome. Starts to become popular because it's a hell of a read. I mean, it's straight up psychotic bullshit, but it's a hell of a read. I have tried to read a lot of it. I have failed. I am a good reader. This thing is, it's a beast. We're going to look at some highlights later. Table of contents alone is enough to send you. And I will have links to videos that folks who have done really brilliant scholarly breakdowns of the information contained therein. That's not why we're here. I'm not here to do a whole episode on what's the Malleus Maleficarum. I'm here to tell you why people started murdering their neighbors. And why we have a social deduction game about kill my neighbor, kill my neighbor. Those of you who remember Eddie Murphy and Kill My Landlord, there you go. All right. We won't even get into the controversial IP theft of the invention of the printing press in Germany. There was a whole lot of bullshit went along with that. Look up that history. That's fascinating. Thank you, Wikipedia, for being universally accessible, at least for now. Hey, guys, help to save Wikipedia, because a lot of the worst people on the planet want it eliminated, and that should tell you how good it probably is. Okay. Invention of the printing press, 1517, allowed a surge, because now we can print this book. This book became, as we can see in the previous bullet point. Did I say it there? No, I didn't. Okay, it's still speculated because we don't have a New York Times bestseller list of the day where people could buy their way to the top. Although you kind of did. Just had a different form because humans never change. This book was rumored to have been second in popularity only to the Bible itself. So we have places who are areas of Europe and the world who are just being introduced to, hello, I'm your new local pastor. Here's a Bible. Here's a Malleus Maleficarum. You're illiterate, so I will read them for you. First job, we need to get rid of apostasy, heresy, blasphemy, and witchcraft. Would all the witches please raise their hands? Okay, so you guys know that actual witches won't raise their hands? So everybody who didn't raise their hand and has a uterus is now subject to torture until they confess. Easy peasy, right? Okay, that was a very small nutshell. That was like a sesame seed nutshell. All right. So the printing press allows this book to be reproduced and reproduced alongside the Bible. Because, I mean, what do Christian people want to do more than learn about their scripture than to have a nice excuse to murder people who do it wrong? Or not at all. So it enabled a revival of the witch panic in centuries to follow, because now we have printed copies. I think if people had been left to their own devices to hand copy this book, and it was only allowed to be hand copied in order to proliferate, it probably would have died out. But the printing press really allowed physical copies of this book to be preserved and then resurrected in the Renaissance in the 16th and 17th centuries. And then, now we're still talking the original German version of the book. All right, these boys did not write this thing in English. At best, maybe you got some Latin translations. But you did not get an English translation until 1928. So that was another way of keeping this book away from the general public for scholarly scrutiny, to be fair. What do you need? All right, let's get down into the brass tacks of I can create a power imbalance in a small, let's call it a Clocktower community. Here's our Clocktower community. I need people in this place as their new pastor. I need them to do what I say. I need them to follow my lead. And I need to be established as the authority to whom everyone looks. Biker girl, hello, welcome in. Welcome in. We are doing a talk show podcast today on the most likely historical origins inspiring the setting of the beautiful social deduction game Blood on the Clocktower. So, you live in a small village. You're the local washerwoman. People bring their dirty clothes to you. Now, keeping in mind that in the fashion of the day, people wore undergarments that were changed daily and outer garments that were rarely washed unless there was some soiling that happened to them. So the undergarments were, you're going through a set, a shirt and pants, probably socks every day. And as long as you keep those removed and get some bird baths and a full wash during the week, then you're dominantly going to be a pretty clean person, right? That's not a problem. But you're the washerwoman, and people, you enjoy doing this work, right? You like getting clothes clean is satisfying to you, and who knows, maybe you lost your sense of smell and dealing with sweaty, rancid stuff from people who are doing hard labor doesn't bother you at all, or you wanted something to do. This is your job in the village. So there you go. You are the washerwoman of your village. Maybe your best friend is the baker, the chef, the person, everybody goes there a couple times a week. They always make extra food. The blacksmith is working really hard out there and doesn't have time at the end of the day, doesn't have energy at the end of the day to try to make something. So they'll stop by the chef's place, your baker, your brewer, right? We're going to have brewmasters here. If you really want to get into the history of the medieval and modern era, you're going to go to History Hit, Dan Snow's History Hit, and you're going to look for any video by Eleanor Janega, and I will link all of those things in the YouTube description after the fact. So, a new pastor has come into town. I don't care. He's not really changing anything. It's now a meeting everybody has to go to on Sunday. They read out of a book. They tell you how to live your life. And here's how to become a better person. And, Jesus Book Club. Go, go, go. So, in order to create the power imbalance and the absolute authority, we're going to need to start with God and a holy war. So, the holy war is going to be against the powers of evil. So that the religious folks have a nice power imbalance, because they're the only ones who get to define what's evil. Right? This is some psychology of manipulation 101. We're going to get you some clear identification of the practices of the demonic servants. Now, throughout this entire witch panic, it is stated multiple times that the demons don't work directly, right? They're not agents necessarily, physical agents. Demons influence witches, and the witches are the baddies because they're being influenced by the demons, and we'll talk about how later. So the only physical people in your town who could be demonic servants are women. The easiest women to target are widows, women without any male protectors, so fathers and brothers who are dead or have no desire to protect them. And oftentimes they were women who challenged authority. The majority of the time, these were midwives. There's some special stuff about midwives of the day. Midwives know a lot about female anatomy. They know a lot about babies and childbirth and procreation, and all sorts of fun stuff. Now, as fun as it might be to think that people's understandings of the world during the 15th century were really backwards, they weren't. In fact, there are people right now, looking at you, Mormon Church, who are far more backwards in their understanding of sex and sexuality, gestation, childbirth, and everything that follows, than the people of the 15th century. In fact, if Eleanor Janega is to be believed, and I believe she is, she's a fabulous presenter and she's incredibly well educated. And it's not often you find somebody who knows their subject exceedingly well and can also present it, but that's why she's a doctor and I assume college professor. Please be a college professor. I mean, medical practitioners were still trained and I think once a year expected to have some interaction with a cadaver, so that, I mean, people understood what was inside a human. War existed. It wasn't, I mean, goodness, there were ancient cultures who had really good understanding of human anatomy and physiology. One of the most fascinating things of the time that I learned from History Hit Medieval is that, and this is very smart because this is more true than the way people understand it today. So when humans are formed in the womb, there's only one set of gonads, not two. There's one set of gonads in the developing human, unless something has gone wrong and, you know, your mileage may vary because DNA is fucky. But that one set of gonads will either become ovaries or testicles. So in the day, there was an idea that both women and men had gonads, that the gonads produced semen. So male gonads produced semen, female gonads produced semen, and so it would require a climax from each party in order for fertilization to happen. Because if each party does not ejaculate their semen, then it can't combine and create a fertilized egg. That's not as backwards as you'd think. Plus, it was a little bit more balanced in the whole orgasm gap equation. That gap was severely narrowed for people who were desiring conception. So midwives, being right in the middle of kind of having the most knowledge of any village of male and female anatomy when it comes to procreation, were often targets because our boys coming in with the dog collars were into, you know, sexual repression and sex is bad and people shouldn't enjoy sex and all that stuff. So for midwives, saying that, you know, for people who want to procreate, that both parties needed to climax was a bit of a challenge. I mean, if you had to say that to people today, if you went out there in our modern world today and said, well, the reason you're having this issue, we don't need to do that. If you want to learn about the orgasm gap, you can Google that and get educated. It's sad. It's really sad. It's really sad. But that's humans. Humans gonna human. The other thing that happens with midwives is midwives have all of the knowledge of how to create abortifacients. An abortifacient is a way to limit the ability of a fertilized egg to implant in the uterus. We have those today. It at the time was dominantly a concoction of tea that caused menstruation. And so, in the event that a woman noticed she had not had her scheduled period, did not want to have a child, she's probably got a few, or is, physically compromised, whatever. Choice is choice. Whoever has the 3D printer gets to decide whether or not their resources are used in order to print that project. So midwives would do that without blinking, right? I mean, it really should not require a whole lot of thought. If somebody says, hey, you know what, I would like to have the tea that makes me have my period and menstruate, there's no reason to say, no, you can't have that. Unless you're a clergyman in the Holy Roman Empire, and then you might do that. The other thing that happens with midwives is a woman in town has the midwife come in to assist with childbirth and post-birth things. They were really helping everybody along the way with all the stuff. Oftentimes the only medical practitioner in a town. Midwives they were not volunteer work, right? So they would expect some compensation. Now suppose if anytime you're dealing with have you ever worked with a freelancer? Somebody's like graphic designer. Oh, come on, you're doing it anyway. Just do it for me for less. Well, no, the price is 2 chickens. Childbirth costs 2 chickens. Or a small piglet. Whatever it is. Humans gonna human, because humans never change. And try not to satisfy the bill or pay the bill, and then maybe the midwife says, well, you can get somebody else to help you with your next birth, and so that they get somebody else to help them with their next birth, and that child is stillborn or something, there's deformity or something like that. Well, now they're gonna blame the midwife, because you don't hate anybody so much as somebody who would not do what you wanted. So midwives were targeted for multiple reasons, dominantly because they were knowledgeable women, and knowledgeable women don't even have to speak up to challenge authority. Knowledgeable women, by their mere existence, challenge authority, because authority is patriarchal. Then we have the attacks on male virility. Now, you might see parallels. I'm not saying this is stuff that's happening in our modern era, but you might notice a few parallels. So we have a couple of things going on. Accounts of witchcraft and the practicing of witchcraft often include not just having too much knowledge, but that men who disagree with these witches find themselves less virile. Or, as we said, if we're dealing with a circumstance where both parties in a cis-het physical sexual intimacy process need to orgasm in order for fertilization to happen, men who are lazy lovers or simply do not want to participate until their partner climaxes are really going to be upset with this knowledge being spread around, especially when their boys with the dog collars are saying, nah, women don't need to enjoy. Hi, Sned. How you doing? Welcome in. Welcome in, everybody in the chat room. So fellas who aren't willing to put in the work might feel like their virility is being attacked. There's also a thing called the shrinking penis syndrome, and this is another wonderful medieval history hit video that talks about how many people were existing transgender in convents and monasteries. Yentl, anybody? Anybody Yentl fan? That there were women dressing as men, existing as monks, and vice versa. So attacks on male virility, where you have a dude who gets outed for not having a penis, might claim to have been cursed by a witch. Or you have a couple in town where one of the members of this supposedly cishet couple is male and the other's presenting as female, but the male does not have a penis. Oh, gosh, I must have been cursed by a witch. Yes, that's why my penis disappeared. Or just straight up erectile dysfunction as a factor of age and loss of testosterone and other hormones that, you know, when a fella notices that maybe he's not, maybe you have to push the on button a few times to get that computer to fire up, or, you know, the pull handle on your lawnmower, whatever, you know, things change with age. And, you know, now that's a witch. That's not age. I'm not old. Or perhaps they just don't find their partner attractive anymore. Maybe they're cheating on their partner. Lots of things can play into this, but any change in male virility, that's a witch. Attacks on female fertility. Oh no, the birth rate is dropping. Civilization is going to collapse. Have you heard that? Have you heard that? Maybe? In the 15th century, you heard that. Because it was a very important thing for the people of the church to have as many babies as possible. And that's part of the we will outbreed them into submission mindset that many colonizers try to use. Holy Roman Empire. Sometimes I hate having been a history teacher. It might not always repeat itself, but it certainly does rhyme. The other thing that happens is there was baby killing. So in an era where you don't have a lot of treatments, maybe for postpartum depression, or it's only understood by midwives, you might have people just straight up going, this baby will not stop crying. And people being driven mad and killing their babies. But that was also blamed on witches. Now, of course, the baby-eating Bishop of Bath and Wells is always going to be, you know, the baby eaters, the baby eaters, the baby eaters, the baby eaters, the baby killers, the baby killers. That goes back through the history of humankind. Anytime one group of people needed to demonize another group of people, right? I feel terrible for the dingo ate my baby lady, because turns out dingoes ate her baby. But the demonization of any group, just stamp them with baby killers. Don't even need to be the eating thing, but, you know, if you want to make these people especially horrible, then claim that not only did they kill the baby, but they took it out in the woods and fed it to the demons. Now, there's also a whole thing, if you've been around live animal birth ever, and you have seen an animal give birth and then eat the placenta, which will happen. Okay, watch this happen with cat birth. For creatures giving birth, okay, that's a huge expenditure of energy and internal resources. At a time when you now have a very vulnerable little tiny creature to take care of and protect, and you can't be away from it for very long. Well, placentas are chock full of nutrients and stuff to give you energy especially if you're an animal who can't go out and hunt right away. Like, good luck walking. But seeing animals eat placentas, well, it's a thing people do now. And I'm talking like not people out living in remote villages. I'm talking about this became a huge fad in the 2000s here in the 21st century. It probably still is. Okay? I mean, people want to freak out about it. That's okay. You swallow your own snot. I can't tell you what you can and cannot manage from a is this edible standpoint. But it's also possible that taking placentas and eating them was then mistakenly viewed by some as they ate the baby. Especially because we're talking about a time period where there was also a little ice age. So food scarcity was real. I can't teach you the entire history of the era. This is everything you need to search for demons. If I want to get people to be convinced there are demons, and now we gotta go find them. They can't stop us. We're on a mission from God. Well, you're also going to need some charismatic, misogynistic male influencers. I don't know where we would find those in our modern world, but we have God and a holy war. It's us against the evils. Gear up, soldiers of Christ. A clear identification of the practices of the demonic servants. We're almost there, kids. We're almost to the Malleus. And mostly the people who are going to be accused are going to be women without male protectors who challenged authority by having knowledge. There will be attacks on male virility, attacks on female fertility, birth rates, and the suspicion of baby killings and or eatings. And then there needs to be charismatic, misogynistic male influencers. Welcome the new pastor. And sexy things, because religious people aren't supposed to talk about sex and sexy things. In fact, kids in Brigham Young University are so scared of having sex that offends God. If you don't know what soaking and jump humping are, well, you might look that up, or you might just spare yourself the eye bleach you're going to need after you read about it. But the idea that you can copulate without moving, and it doesn't count as sex for God, because God's only going to look if you move. Right? This is the weeping angels? I don't know. I don't understand the psychological maneuvers people try to go through to get away with doing something that nobody really can enforce. I mean, if God didn't want you to do it, and your God's capable of smiting people, get smote. But if you don't get smote, you're probably fine. Unless somebody else can convince you that there's some eternal place where you'll be punished. All that aside, so you have alpha male influence. I will tell you how not only to be an incredible man, but let's talk about sexy things. We don't talk about sex, and now we're going to talk about not only sexy things, but really whack shit. The control of information is everything. This is true in the game as well. Blood on the Clocktower, if you go back to my previous episode, part 2, we talk about the importance of information and misinformation as elements of the game. You know exactly what I'm talking about? Thank you. You might, again, your mileage may vary, but I wonder how many people will see parallels to stuff in the current popular culture. So, if you're going to control information, oh yes, with that, yes, it's hilariously horrifying. Um, if you're going to control all the information going around, you're creating and manipulating beliefs through social bonding and belonging groups that ensure safety. This is getting deep into some Maslow's hierarchy stuff. If you want to know anything about Maslow's hierarchy, um, wow, I don't know why Twitch is repeating your comments, Sned. That's absolutely wild. Um, thank you. Um, this will go up on YouTube. Nobody will see the Twitch comments unless they come to the Twitch VOD. It's okay. That's why I'm not really reading a lot of stuff out loud today, but I appreciate your company. So if you're going to control information, you need to threaten people's safety, right? Fear is the best way to control shit. If I make you panicked and you have not practiced how to move through fear as the little mind killer, I will let it pass through me. And when the fear is gone, only I will remain. More deep. Taking people who feel safe in their social environment and generating no, you're fine, buddy bear, fine, buddy bear. Creating fear through a social safety net that they relied on is the fastest way to be the one person who gets to control the information everybody's using. Okay, so in your Maslow hierarchy, you get your physiological needs met. That's sleep, food, sex. You get your safety needs met, meaning you have a warm shelter. You don't have food insecurity. Then you get your belonging needs met, and that's this. This is your village. Your village is your belonging group. And your belonging group can include you or exclude you. And a lot of that has to do with everybody agreeing to certain norms of behavior and interaction that continue to foster a beneficial society for everybody in the group. If you're allowed in the group, then you need to participate in the group being a better, safer place for everybody. And then you just keep moving up the hierarchy if you want to continue to study Maslow. It's fascinating. I find it reinforced again and again and again. Is it complete? Is it a pyramid? No, I don't think any of that's a good representation of it, but the fundamental principles I don't think can be significantly challenged from an instinctive brain level. You want your physiological needs met, your safety needs met, your bonding group or belonging group needs met. So compromising all of that, start with the safety, right? If your belonging group no longer ensures your safety because they think you're a witch, you're in trouble. Using shocking imagined scenarios in dramatic story form to influence the memories of actual experience. You can go back several episodes in Grandma's Games Lab where I talk about brains and the challenge between knowing what is real and what is imagined. What is actual experience and what is psychosis. So we looked at how that is used and why it's important in diagnosing schizophrenia and what parts of the brain. Did we do that in the first episode of this? Was that the first episode of roleplay? Possibly. So it might be part 1 of games, brains, and roleplay. So if you can shock a system and activate the amygdala, while you're describing a dramatic story, you can mimic formation of memories that appear to have been an actual experience. So let's go to the Malleus. Let's stop all of that for just a moment. And let's go to the Malleus Maleficarum and look at the actual book itself. This thing... Let's do this table of contents real quick. Can you see where we are? We're in the introduction to the 1948 edition. Remember, I told you this book was written originally in Germany, in German. I did not check to see if it was Latin as well. It was written in 1486. The first English translation, 1928. And we'll talk about this. But for the 1948 edition, this is what the translator, his name is... Oh wait, that's not there. It's over here. Sorry, Montague Summers. Oh, Montague Summers was the translator of this edition in 1928. So 300 years later, certain it is that the Malleus Maleficarum is the most solid, the most important work in the whole vast library of witchcraft. One turns to it again and again with edification and interest. From the point of psychology, from the point of jurisprudence, from the point of history, it is supreme. It is hardly too much to say that later writers, great as they are, have done little more than draw from the seemingly inexhaustible wells of wisdom which the two Dominicans, Heinrich Kramer and James Jacob, we've had Johannes, Jacob, and James now, Sprenge, have given us in the Malleus Maleficarum. I'm wondering if this guy even really agreed to any of this. What is most surprising is the modernity of the book. There is hardly a problem, a complex, a difficulty, which they have not foreseen, discussed, and resolved. Okay. Onward and upward. Let us go to the table of contents, shall we? So, Montague Summers is a troublesome lad. He had some difficulties in life. And the fact that he is providing the first English translation of a book that also had a lot of trouble in life is kind of fitting. Montague Summers. So the Malleus Maleficarum was basically dismissed by actual theological scholars as senile and a work that was not deserving of attention. Montague Summers, who, well, yeah, let's go to Montague for a moment. Actually, we'll look more at the Malleus in just a second. That is a blood on the Clocktower table. This, oh, sorry, I'm gonna blind you. Sorry. Sorry. Um, Hopefully you can read some of this. Let's pop that up a little more. So, Montague Summers was the seventh child of a banker and his wife, who was the daughter of a banker. He grew up in a lot of wealth, and his father worshipped evangelical, low church. He really liked the whole Catholic thing. But he goes to Trinity College, Oxford. He gets a fourth-class Bachelor of Arts degree in theology. Then he gets a Master of Arts. Then he continues his religious training at Lichfield Theological. He's going to become a priest in the Church of England. Publishes a book, publishes some poetry. Everybody starts to notice that old Montague is really fascinated by medievalism, Catholic liturgy, and activities of the occult. So he's ordained a deacon, 1908, Bishop of Bristol. He's appointed as a curate. Summers' brief curacy ended under a cloud, and he never proceeded to higher orders in the Anglican Church, apparently because of rumors of his interest in Satanism and allegations of sexual impropriety with boys. Young boys. Let's fast forward a year or two, because now he's decided that the Church of England, maybe not for him. Let's go back into my fascination with Catholicism. So he converts and starts to study for the Catholic priesthood. Changes his name to Reverend Alphonsus Joseph Mary Augustus Montague Summers, and acted, even dressed, as a Catholic priest, even though he was never a member of any order or diocese. Nobody would ordain him. So now he heads over to seminary in Warnish in the Diocese of Nottingham. Local bishop refuses to ordain him. This man has a known reputation. This Montague, the Reverend Alphonsus Joseph Mary Augustus Montague Summers. The more names somebody has, goodness gracious. Well, let's fast forward even more. Okay, here we go. Nobody's going to ordain him. He's walking around. He's cosplaying as a Catholic priest. It's possible somebody illicitly ordained him. I can only guess why somebody would ordain him. I'm guessing blackmail, because where is... Yes, oh, here we have the reason he had to leave England the first time. That's right, before he even converted. This happened before his, supposedly. These two fellas, he got with a fellow clergyman and attempted to seduce a choir boy. Oh, God, stop it. I did not click that. He was afraid that police were going to come for him, so he fled to Belgium. Then he came back to England, converted to Catholicism. Nobody would ordain him because everybody knew his reputation already. It's kind of hard to hide in these days if you're going to claim to be an elevated theologian. But if we have somebody who's already been publicly outed as a pedophile of young boys, or at least a predator of young boys, then you'd imagine that maybe their information that would allow them to blackmail somebody to illicitly ordain them might be pretty high. He gets to work as a teacher. Oh, yay! I'm sure he did a lot of really great stuff for the kids. So, okay. Heinrich Kramer was weird enough. Montague Summers is weird enough. We don't need to add to the weird, but we will. Because when we go back to the original book here, and why would somebody who was big into being a predator of young people, and possibly with homosexual inclinations, who knows? Not everyone who is a predator of children is revealing a sexual gender preference so much as a power imbalance preference. Sometimes it's whoever you can get the best access to, not necessarily a preference of sexual intimacy. Okay, onward we go. This book, Table of Contents. First of all, we're going to get the Papal Bull, which talked about, hey, this is the Inquisition. Off we go. We need to get rid of apostasy and heresy and blasphemy, also witchcraft. So, here's what's in the box. A devil, a witch, and the permission of Almighty God. Here beginneth auspiciously the first part of this work. Question the first, whether it be a heresy to maintain that witches exist. Come here. Where's my bookmark? This is our boy Montague. Were certain writers pretending to base their opinions on the word of St. Thomas, that's St. Thomas Aquinas, by the way, when he treats of impediments brought about by magic charms, have tried to maintain that there is not such a thing as magic, that it only exists in the imagination of those men who ascribe natural effects, the causes whereof are not known, to witchcraft and spells. Wait, my brother. Somebody is saying that the reason that vase fell off the windowsill is not because of a poltergeist. They're saying that there was a stiff breeze and the window was cracked enough that it caused the vase to fall off the shelf. Those people are heretics because they come up with natural explanations for supernatural deeds? Yikes. There are others who acknowledge indeed that witches exist, but they declare that the influence of magic and the effect of charms are purely imaginary and phantasmical. No, when the witch curses me, I'm cursed. It's not a self-fulfilling prophecy that I believe in the curse and now cursed things happen. That would be practical. A third class of writers maintain that the effects said to be wrought by magic spells are altogether illusory and fanciful, although it may be that the devil does really lend his aid to some witch. The errors held by each one of these persons may thus be set forth and thus confuted. I reject your reality and replace it with my own. But this is contrary to the true faith which teaches us that certain angels fell from heaven and are now devils. This is certain. Okay, in Montague's universe, in Heinrich's universe, Lilith, Lucifer, the fall of the angels becoming devils and demons are all critical elements to understanding Christianity in the modern world. This really happened, and we are bound to acknowledge that by their very nature they can do many wonderful things which we cannot do, and those who try to induce others to perform such evil wonders are called witches. And because infidelity in a person who has been baptized is technically called heresy, therefore such persons are plainly heresy. You can see how the logic has wrapped around and bitten its own tail. Okay, some angels didn't fall from heaven, some angels did fall from heaven. The ones who did fall influenced people on earth. The people who are influenced are witches, because the fallen angels have the same powers as real angels. Now, those of us who are influenced by the angels who didn't fall, why, we are not witches. We are helpful clergymen who are here to identify the mirror image. Right? This is my bad image in the mirror is exactly like me. They're just influenced by the dark elements that are exactly the same. Right? I'm a clergyman who's influenced by good angel. They're influenced by fallen angel, and they perform evil wonders. I can't say anything about the life and times of Heinrich Kramer because I just did not have sufficient time or interest to research that person's life, nor do I think there would be documentation the way there is on Montague of predatory behaviors that are against the teachings of the church. And so to have somebody who sees an evil version of themselves in the people they want to persecute, are we following the logic as it applies to our modern world? Are we following the logic, boys and girls? What else did I bookmark? Yeah, we're still going on in the early, but this is just, well, it says 1737. That's because of the size of the font that I chose for this. By the way, I got this from my library. This is on the app called Libby. This is free from your library. Get your library cards, everybody. The second part of our inquiry is this: whether obstinately to maintain that witches exist is heretical. The question arises whether people who hold that witches do not exist are to be regarded as notorious heretics, or whether they are to be regarded as gravely suspect of holding heretical opinions. Okay. Snake ate tail. Tail gone. Snake gone. Snake. There's sexual connotation there. I'm sorry. No double entendres intended. Whether children can be generated by incubi and succubi. By the way, Lilith, first wife of Adam, you may have heard references to Lilith in modern culture, such as in Cyberpunk 2077 and certain other things. Lilith, first wife of Adam, was booted out of the garden for disobeying Adam. Again, women with information being a challenge to authority because authority is male. She supposedly went off and copulated with a bunch of demons, possibly Lucifer himself, and the progeny of those copulations were incubi and succubi, who, let's see if we get a good definition of them. By which devils are the operations of incubus and succubus practiced? We're going to have to look here. Before sin came into the world, devils take their part in this generation. To beget a child is an act of a living body. Devils cannot bestow life upon the bodies which they assume. Ugh. These devils assume a body. Objection. This is somebody who's having a crisis internally. Bodily material, the whole idea that witches were stealing semen to collect human semen from one person and transfer it to another. Devils have no power to move these bodies. Yes, so you have to say that no one can be accused of being a devil or a demon. No human person can be accused of being a devil or a demon because devils and demons are assumed a masculine presentation of self. So when they act through women. You with me? Oh, that man even brought Aristotle into this shit. I hate it here. I hate it here. St. Augustine. Man, Augustine and Thomas Aquinas getting all their shit twisted and warped. For the sake of brevity, too late. The pious reader, where is... Are you not... We've gone all the way back to Dionysus? Yikes. Are we even going to talk about incubi and succubi here? I have not seen the word on any of these pages. They are enemies of the human race, ever fertile in fresh deceptions. I'm fairly certain that incubi are supposed to be male sexual agents and succubi are meant to be female sexual agents, both of whom, here we go. The satyrs and fauns, commonly called incubi. Certain devils. Oh, we are naming all of the angels who fit on the head of a pin here. Which is crazy. This is in so many ways like creating a fan fiction of the Harry Potter universe where you try to explain why everything is real. So we have satyrs and fauns. This is going to take up so much. Okay. Devils turn themselves into incubi or succubi, not for the cause of pleasure, so that a man may be given, maybe more given to all vices. So men who commit vices are not simply men who are out of control and have no internal discipline over their bodies and their desires. They are always, always, always going to be under the influence of devils. This is the best explanation. So you have a dog, and when your dog is behaving, your dog is under their own influence. When your dog is misbehaving, the dog is under the influence of the cat. The dog has been possessed by a cat. And when we go back into the brain, when we go back to our episode of Brains, Games, and Gambling, how gambling capitalizes on the human instinct to say that when I play cards and win, it's because I'm skilled at cards, and when I play cards and lose, it's because of bad luck. There's some external force. This is the same psychological principle. This is only 300 pages in. I'll give you the links because we're trying to talk about Blood on the Clocktower. But what I really need you to see is why choose that setting? And why choose that setting for a game where innocent townfolk murder other innocent townfolk because somebody told them there's a demon? You just imagine going to your local grocery store, picking some random idiot and going, I accuse you of demon, and everybody agrees to kill them. That's how fucking mad this is. Okay, before I get too far, I'm not even too far down the rabbit hole. Look at this shit. There's just whole sections on the method of sentencing the accused to be questioned, and how she She always must be questioned on the first day, and whether she may be promised her life. Oh my goodness. Of the way, yes. So we get into the particulars of how they affect men, how witch midwives commit most horrid crimes when they kill children or offer them to devils, how witches injure cattle, how they raise and stir up hailstorms and tempests and cause lightning to blast men and beasts. Of 3 ways in which men, and not women, may be discovered to be addicted to witchcraft. Yep, they pulled out some men in all of this. If you're a man and you're defending any of the women who are accused of witchcraft, your whole life is about to get turned upside down. That you might as well help out a young woman who accuses someone of being a sexual predator. Say some 13-year-old girl accuses someone in a position of power and authority of being a sexual predator, and you know there's evidence, and you try to defend that young woman. How long do you think you're going to escape this Inquisition? Witchcraft is not caused by the powers that move the stars. There are some typos in this. Witchcraft, it's okay. We still know what they meant. Communication happened. We walk away. You just set it down and walk away. It's fine. Nobody is here to correct everyone else on the planet. Stop it. Voices and words under a favoring influence of the stars. How witches copulate with devil. Why is it that women are chiefly addicted to evil? Oh, do we want to know why? Why superstition is chiefly found in women. What sort of women are found to be above all others? Superstitious and witches. Can witches sway the minds of men to love or hatred? Infatuate love, oh. It hurts. It hurts. There are actual descriptions in here of how to torture. Now, in the initial papal bull and the documents set forth that were carried around by inquisitors, the Pope explicitly said, hey, you're not here to draw blood, you're not here to lop off limbs, you're not here to, we just want people to confess their heresy and commit to accepting the doctrine of the church. Well, not Heinrich. Not Heinrich. Heinrich was like, well, if you really want somebody to confess to something they don't want to confess to, here we go. This is only the second part. This is a 4-part treatise. Treating the methods by which witchcraft is inflicted and how it may be auspiciously removed. Burn them! Drown them! Basically, the only way to get the demon out of the woman is to kill the woman. How they make their pacts. How they are transported from place to place. So for all of those YouTube videos on why do people say that witches flew? Okay, Malleus Maleficarum. There it is. First published in 1928. Published again in 1948, which led to a hyper-religious it informed a hyper-religious population returning from World War II that really made the United States of the 1950s a scary place to be for anybody who was not part of the Christian Book Club, the Jesus Fan Club, spouting all of their Jesus merch. That's the same era in the United States when In God We Trust was added to money. The same era in the United States when under God was added to the Pledge of Allegiance, there was a whole lot of Christian boot stomping in order to not only affect public opinion, but to affect public policy. That might be enough of the Malleus. Where were we? The control of information is everything. So you see that if you come up with an 800-page tome that names all the angels who fit on a head of a pin, tells you about all of their jobs, that talks about evil in manufactured ways that do not even exist in other documents, in scripture, in history. They are coming from fever dreams of a perverse mind that, using shocking and imagined scenarios in dramatic story form to influence memories of actual experience. So now I've told people why this happens, and all of the reasons I've told you why X, Y, or Z happens is because of witches. Whenever X, Y, or Z happens, you will instinctively go, I wonder if that was a witch. Now you're thinking about it. You never would have before I brought it up. But I gave you a reason to constantly suspect witches, and when you get to a point where you're dissatisfied with the way things have gone, and you have a neighbor you really, really, really hate, because you have to see them every day, and every time you see them, they go, Heidi-ho, neighborino, and you want them dead more than anything on the planet. That accusing them of being a witch would be a quick and easy way of getting them out of your life. But now we're going to add the third element that says twisting a perceived usefulness to serve false narratives. Now I've generated suspicion in you. I've allowed you to get to a point where your suspicion is fever pitched. And now I'm going to give you a perceived usefulness to serve false narratives that I've created by exploiting cultural power imbalances, because I am the power and the authority here as the religious curate, the theologian in town. I hold all of the religious power. I hold all the political power, because I am here as a representative of God. And your pleasing of me, your willingness to serve me and to serve me pleasing information will elevate your social status in our little village. And then you will also be perceived as useful, because you know what you did? That's right, you battle evil in service of God. And by the way, you're my favorite now, and you can light the candles at church on Sunday. You can read from the book during the service. It is, I mean, this is behavior that is observed in chimpanzee colonies. Then the next thing you do is you trap the duped people, all of the people you fooled, into serving you and your false narratives. They're now trapped. Even if you spring the trap and be like, haha, also, now you owe me sexual favors, or I will tell all your neighbors what you did. In fact, I will accuse you of being the witch, and they will believe me because I'm the curate. And snap goes the trap. Because if they admit that they didn't actually believe this, there's nowhere to turn at this point. There is nowhere for an honest townsperson who just wanted to exact revenge on someone who grieved them, if this is the tool that they use to enact that punishment, they're trapped. And just like the game of Blood on the Clocktower, information is everything, misinformation is everything else. While the witches and the demons panic of the 13th through 17th centuries was not directly caused by the Inquisitions instituted by the Roman Catholic Church, the sanctioned murder spree spread across the Holy Roman Empire with the clergymen, much like the fleas on the rats, which sparked the outbreaks of the plague. The church didn't start a witch hunt. The church wanted to root out pagan beliefs that were creeping into religious beliefs, and in doing that, through Inquisition, rather than education, the church sanctioned earthly punishment. And then the people who were basically getting off on punishment and also doing bad things that needed to be punished, but needed to make an external cause the reason, not an internal cause of lack of moral fortitude and discipline, had to be something else. It wasn't even the devil. I wasn't even influenced by the devil. I was cursed by the witch who's influenced by the devil. I mean, how far are you going to go to avoid accountability and consequences? Oh, we're just going to murder several thousands, dozens of thousands of people? Some 50,000 people total, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you say all you had to do was go into a town, tell them about this document, tell them about all the ways of finding a witch and killing a witch, get a few townspeople to execute a neighbor. I mean, these days you might as well say, well, we've got to kill all the muggles. You still walk around accusing people of being muggles, and your actual neighbors are willing to kill them. But you are so isolated. There is no social media. The church is social media. Clergy people are social media influencers of the day. That's what evangelism is. It's social influence. And once you've poisoned that well, those clergy people who are either predators or willing to protect predators or just straight up misogynists who have serious mommy issues and don't like being told what to do or being contradicted by women, they are going to dip into the poisoned well and take other people with them. The idea that you could just make something up and get people to murder their neighbors. But if you like that kind of a thing, let me tell you what you got. And that is Blood on the Clocktower. That's right, we have an incredible game brought to us by the Pandemonium Institute. This is what it looks like. This is an official Blood on the Clocktower YouTube channel. In fact, this one just came out today. So I pulled it up for us to take a peek at. Because this is what you're going to see when you go to botc.app and download the app. You don't have to download the app. You can play it through your browser. You don't want to play online with other people through the browser because it tends to have difficulty. But if you want to play the game, this is what it looks like. This is your clock tower. These are players sitting around the clock tower. This is an 11-player game. You can have 5 to 20 players. There are different scripts where you can go to Blood on the Clocktower Wiki and look at all of the different types of characters that can be in a game. These characters are all regular townsfolk. These characters are folks who they're outsiders. They haven't been here very long. Somebody moved to the neighborhood, moved to the village a year or two ago, and they're not really an established townsfolk. Then you have a demon, and then the minions, your incubi, your succubi, your witches, your wizards, your warlocks, whatever you've chosen to call your imaginary creatures. At least this game is pretend. Okay? And it's incredibly fun. Because you really are going to be using all of the same tactics of manipulation, using lies and truths alternately to influence people. This is a game that is driven. There are mechanics that will allow different characters with different abilities to combine their information and figure out which seats are lying about who they are. So you can see here, this is the storyteller. The storyteller is looking at the entire grim, this is the grimoire. When you take a script from Blood on the Clocktower and assign roles to the table, it's not a table, they're not sitting at a table. When you assign roles to the circle of players, this is now known as the grimoire. When you look at that later in the game, let me pull up a moment that's not people talking. Oh no, actually this would be, because
like this.
This is always going to be storyteller view. So when you are sitting at a table, these will not be filled in. Your token will be the only one that's filled in. And as you talk to people, they're going to tell you there's something, and then you will change their token as you go. But I definitely recommend going to Blood on the Clocktower YouTube channel. Again, I will put links throughout all of the doobly-doos on the YouTube video, and I need to take a break, and since I don't usually do breaks on the Patreon, we're just going to call it a day. I didn't see any questions in chat, so I will assume that if anybody has any questions, you can make them comments on the YouTube video. That's fine by me. We will be back with another episode. I might go play some Blood on the Clocktower today. But I am not entirely sure where we're going with our next episode. But I'll let you know when we get there. We haven't really been getting a lot of traction on the videos, and I'm not 100% sure how to make that happen. So, I don't know. We'll see when we get there. As we say, we'll burn that bridge when we get to it. But in the meantime, go check out Blood on the Clocktower, and maybe even dive in online. They do have a Discord as well, so if you're on Discord, you can just look up Blood on the Clocktower and hop in there. It can be a bit overwhelming. There are multiple ways to play the game. Maybe you'll find an IRL group at your friendly local game store. Wherever people play tabletop roleplay games, you will probably see this. or have people who know about it and maybe want to give it a try. Maybe you'll even host a game and have some friends come join you. But that's all I have for you today here on Grandma's Games Lab, where we learn about ourselves by how we play and by investigating games, brains, and history. How they interact, how they intersect, how they inform one another, and how they inform us. So let me say thank you very much for joining me today on this episode, and I will see you next time. All right, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye!